Check one, two, check one, two. All right, so let's get right into it. So, article from USA Today published on Yahoo. Um, yeah, so looks like the NATO nations are stating that they're going to go ahead under the U.S. and NATO have agreed to send jets to Ukraine to try to bolster them and have their pilots create a no-fly work on creating a no-fly zone in Russia. Um, that's something that looks like Zelensky had been asking for help with getting that done. That looks like that's coming to fruition, which is not a good thing, um, because Putin put out a statement. He said, "Listen, NATO should and the U.S. should stay out of. They need to stay out of um, this war between, I guess this. Well, he's not. They're not calling it war. It's military. It's military action, right? So between Ukraine and Russia, and so he's saying they should stay out of this military conflict, so to speak. So, but they're shipping in tons of weapons, rocket launchers. Now they're sending in fighter jets, and more than likely, um, they're gonna send in probably pilots along with those fighter jets. They're gonna give them some technical assistance. They may even send in some pilots covertly, and then so they're gonna do is probably ship a bunch of jets, slip some fighter pilots in, and then with the Ukrainian army to bolster them, and then create it. You'll start seeing these jets in the sky, and that's probably going to trigger at that point, once they figure it out, I mean, they're watching this, I'm sure that, and once they figure out that NATO is shipping jets in and trying to create a no-fly zone with jets and probably pilots in Ukraine through Poland, that's a red line. So at that point, um, Putin. Well, we all know what Putin said, right? So he's basically got his finger on the button, so to speak, right? And and so you risk, and then they're talking about. Well, let's go through this article a little bit. NATO countries support Ukraine against the invasion have green lighted to send fighter jets as part of military aid. Anthony Blinken said on Sunday, today, early today. We're talking with our Polish friends right now about what we might be able to do. So they're gonna go ahead. They're saying it's a go. They're sending. They're gonna basically ship jets in to start shipping fighter jets into uh, Ukraine and then create a no-fly zone, right? Which Putin already said was an act of. He said the sanctions are a declaration of war, and the not the creating a no-fly zone was a declaration of war. So we already know where this is going. So doing an interview on CBS News, Face the Nation. Um, so they're gonna create a de facto no-fly zone through a back door, by shipping fighter jets to Ukraine, and then so-called having the Ukrainian Air Force, guys in the Ukrainian Air Force that can fly these jets, fly them. But they're probably gonna send in some fighters, some pilots as well to help bolster them. So NATO countries have ruled out policing a no-fly zone. Well, they're creating a no-fly zone with that. They're gonna so it says Russian President Putin said on Saturday Moscow would consider any third-party declaration of a no-fly zone over Ukraine as participating in this armed conflict. Right. So basically, a declaration of war. You are now a participant. So if Poland, which is a NATO country, now sends in these jets, possibly even fighters, even pilots to fly some of these jets. He already said it right there. I'm going to consider that a third party declaration, right? Basically, or participation in an armed conflict. I'm sorry. He's going to consider that as participation in this armed conflict, right? If that, and because that's probably how they're going to look at it. And we already know what he said. You know, he has raised the, he has his nuclear forces on high alert. And now they're talking about banning all Russian oil imports. Now, why is it significant? This is significant because of what happened in Japan during World War II, right? What caused, if you look at what caused, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. What caused Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor was the oil embargo, right? So let's see if we can pull that up. Let's see if it's any real quick. So yeah, so history.com on July 26, 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt seizes all Japanese assets in the United States. Right, hold on, get this out the screen. All right, make sure it's showing up. So he stated for the because they invaded just like Ukraine, French Indochina. The Japanese went to a part of French Indochina. So on a, invaded a part of China, which is interesting. So U.S. was defending their move into part of China, right? So so this was kind of the same situation. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? So they froze all Japanese assets in America, Britain, the Dutch Indies, boom, boom, boom. You know, same thing going on now. So then it says Japan lost access to three-fourths of its overseas trade, 88% of its imported oil. So you better pay attention. Pay attention to the oil. Japan lost access to three-fourths of its overseas oil trade, 88% of its imported oil. Japan's oil reserves were only sufficient to last 3 years and only half that time if it went to war and consumed fuel at a more frenzied pace, right? So basically, we see, right? So basically, we see that that's what really triggered. We see the trigger points for the attack on Pearl Harbor, right? Was the where they started. We see the Japanese occupation of, you know, they started moving in and occupying, you know, different parts of China and other places, right? And then they started sanctioning them and freezing like 88%. They knocked 88% of their oil offline, right? Now that's what they're talking. Now you jump back over here, just for reference, right? That's what they're talking about doing here. Russia supplies, as you read down in this article, it says, right? Russia supplies about 30 to 40% of the oil to uh, Europe right now, right? So, yeah, Russia supplies about 30, 40% of the oil to Europe right now. Let me see. Russian oil imports, yeah, and natural gas, right? So that's definitely a hot button. Like the sanctions, right? Gas is top $4 a gallon in the U.S., right, which causes gas to spike. So this morning you had some dweeb on I forget that guy's name, one of the hosts of Meet the Press. He said, "Oh yeah, sanctions is not going to have anything on Russia. It's not going to impact the U.S. and Europe. It'll be fine. Everything will be okay." I'm sticking to myself. This guy's a moron. Anybody listening to this guy is a moron. Sanctions are a declaration of war. History tells. I just showed you the article, history.com. I'm like, wow, this motherfucker doesn't read history books. Sanctions are a declaration of war. If they cut off, they've cut off Russia from um, American Express. Looks like they banned Russia today. American Express, Mastercard, Visa, SWIFT system, banking system. Now they're talking about cutting off the gas, right? And so that's going to be a very, very, very hot issue, right? If they decide to start cutting off and banning Russian exports and imports, like an embargo, right? Import and export on oil. And so with the whole situation with them banning, if they do that and then they create this de facto no fly zone, start pushing these jets in and supplying fighters, jet fighters, jet fighter pilots, and helping, create this no fly zone in Ukraine. More than likely, this thing's gonna escalate really, really fucking quick. Like, I mean, because within 6 months of them doing that in Japan, they took out Pearl Harbor. So, I mean, you can use that as kind of a gauge that, if they do if they, I mean, they're down to the oil. If they give them an order to start blocking Russian, and they're already doing it, a lot of companies are scared, so they're moving away from the Russian oil imports, which is causing the price to. So they're doing it's de facto causing a lot of companies to move away from the Russian oil right now, and it's spiking gas and oil prices and heating oil and stuff like that around the world, even here in the U.S. Even though it hasn't started yet. So anybody saying like, "Oh yeah, it's not gonna be blowback from that," you're an idiot. I mean, you can go read the history, .com article just like I just did, and we know that's not true. We know that the sanctions. I mean, we just might as well make it plain, right? Because I mean, you don't want to get. You look at what happened in Pearl Harbor. They said, well, we never expected it, right? And also another interesting thing you got in this article is the State Department. This is another thing to watch right here. State Department is urging Americans to leave Russia immediately. They citing unprovoked, unjustified attack against Ukraine and potential for harassment of U.S. citizens by Russian government and security forces. I mean, the question is that really why they telling them to leave? Or is it something else? Like you don't want to get caught up. You know what I mean? Basically, you know, when we get into a back and forth with them directly, right? So I'm just saying you don't want to get caught with your pants down, right? Especially with fucking with Vladimir Putin because this dude, he's. He's not really to be played with. Like, and they're gonna keep going. They're gonna keep antagonizing him. They're gonna pour gas. Obviously, they're gonna keep pouring gas on the fire. And you see what he when they pour gas on the fire in Ukraine. You see what he did. And he already stated his nuclear forces are on high alert. So more than likely, yeah, you just don't want to get caught with your pants down. More than likely, this is gonna get super ugly in a minute. You know, and so that's why they're telling these people to get out of Russia, right? Because now the clock is ticking. You know, so the clock is ticking. On this bullshit. But you know, I gotta say, karma is a bitch. So, and you know, you can't. You look at what happened in, Iraq, what happened in Libya, what happened in Syria, what happened in Palestine, what happened in Somalia, what happened in, fill in the blank, Syria, right? And so, all you can say is, when shit happens, knowing the truth of that, you know, there's no such thing as exceptionalism. Like, you know, We're exceptional. We can do whatever we want. That shit has a shelf life, right? You talking that bullshit about accept. We're exceptional. That means we can do it, but nobody can do it to us. Well, you about to find out that that's bullshit. They sold you a bad bill of goods. You're not exceptional. It's not everybody except us. You see, because then karma comes into play. You see, and I didn't want to make this too long, but that was just on my mind. Like that exceptionalism bullshit they tell you. We're exceptional. What the fuck are you talking? Exceptional at what? What does that even mean? That's kind of like code for Nazi. Exceptionalism is code for Nazism. Really, truth be told, right? Exceptional means I can bomb Libya, I can bomb Iraq for no reason or whatever, but nothing will happen to me, right? That type of shit. You know what I mean? Like it's some total bullshit, and it's about to come to like it's about to hit a brick wall. At this point, it just hit a brick wall in Ukraine. That shit. You know what I'm saying? Like it can go on for a while, but it can't go on forever. So eventually there's a karmic debt that has to be paid, right? Like Ukraine. Ukraine was part of the invasion forces that invaded Iraq. I don't know if people know that. So, what I mean? They just getting their karma. Now somebody invaded them, right? And so, nobody, that exceptionalism bullshit. You're not the exception to the rule, right? And, so now, sometimes, you got to pay, at some point, you got to pay the piper, right? The check comes due. See? So now the check is due. The karmic check has come due, right? And you're not exceptional. You see, these people are not exceptional. Maybe exceptionally wicked, but not exceptional. Like you're not going to be an exception to the rule, right? And the karmic check has come due now. It's time to pay the piper, right? And so this shit is coming back around, right? And so, yeah, man, just I would just say don't get caught with your don't be caught unaware. Don't get caught with your pants down. Don't be like we're exceptional. Nothing to ever happen to me. And then you look up and you toast. I mean you probably toast anyway. If this shit goes down, it's gonna get ugly, right? It's gonna get ugly. It's no telling how the cookie gonna crumble. But I got a feeling, like I was thinking it was gonna be a peace deal in April, and, but I don't know. Not now. Like with them increasing the sanctions and sending the jets, and then they like, yo, we want all Americans to leave Russia immediately. Yeah, I mean, and knowing the historical precedents, I just say, I don't know. I don't know if you can have peace by April. If you can have a peace agreement where Ukraine goes neutral, like I really don't know. I mean, they keep ramping this shit up with sanctions and and fighter jets and all that kind of shit. It's just gonna exacerbate an already bad situation. So I can't see I can't see them dialing it back. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's just gonna be, it's time to pay that karmic debt. It's like it's time to pay up. The check is due, and that's what it is. You know what I mean? That's all. It's just the time. Sometimes the time come. Like you be getting like motherfuckers. Let's be honest. These motherfuckers have been getting away with shit for a long time. A long time. Long time. A long time. What happened to the Indians? What happened to slavery? What happened to You know what I'm saying? Look at Iraq. It's just a long line of, this exceptionalism bullshit. And I just think now this it's just gonna be hell to pay. You know, like the universe is just gonna reciprocate and multiply that shit and give it back to these people. And the fucked up part about it is a lot of people who really didn't agree with that shit. Now they gotta get caught up in that. Like people like me, I gotta take it on the chin along with a bunch of people who really drug me into this. Me and my family, we got drug into this from just having to be here. You know what I mean? A part of this being born at this time, being in this place. So, you just you gotta just, I would say just use your intuition. You know, at this point, you gotta use your intuition because this shit is going. Looks like I said, I was hoping in April we get a peace agreement, but I don't know. I don't think so now. I don't think so now. I think, and the guy Zelensky, he's a bit of a fucking dweeb. Like, if you watch him, he's like he's a bit of an asshole. You know, truth be told, like he talk a lot of shit, very you know, just talk a lot of shit. You know, and he doesn't seem like I don't think he's somebody that Putin really can deal with. As far as like, he's very defiant, shit talking. He wants to, I want to fight. Give me some jets, man. Shoot at him. I want some nukes. What got him into this was asking about nukes. Talking about he wanted to put nukes in Ukraine. All that kind of shit. So he's just like an idiot that's throwing gas on the fire. If he was smart, he would cut a deal. He would have cut a deal to kind of dial this shit down. He would have cut a deal. He would have, you know what I mean? But anyway, not to make this shit too long, but so yeah, I just think it's a karmic debt that the builders do on us at this point now, and with them, the jets and cut, the oil, and but once they start the oil, I think that's really when it's gonna be the trigger. When you see that oil embargo, don't get caught with your pants down. I'm just leave it there. That's all.